This is Surviving as a Civilian. I am your host, Scott. With the help of my friend Andrew, we created this podcast to share success stories of combat veterans and how they overcame the challenges of returning back to civilian life. These are actual stories told by actual veterans. Content warning, this podcast talks about war, and some of the stories in this podcast contain graphic events of violence and may contain explicit language. Listener discretion is advised. Additionally, these veterans are telling their story of how they recall the events. Some of the details may have changed over time. Welcome to Surviving as a Civilian. I'm here with my longtime friend, Chris Egan. Chris, how are you?
I am good, Scott. I am fantastic.
Thank you for reaching out to me and Andrew and doing this with us. I think it'll really push out the message that we're trying to get across to everybody. So let's start. Why did you decide to join the military?
So I was 19, coming up on 20, and I wanted to play music for a living, right? That was my plan. I was playing in bands, like recording demos. Playing some of the shows that I had played, I was meeting guys that are like my age now, who were still so early 40s, that were still holding on for their big break and just waiting and waiting and waiting. And they were way better musicians than I were, and better songs and this and that. So I kind of looked at it and I was like, man, I don't know if this is what I should be doing, because that's a tough nut to crack. And then where I lived in New Jersey at the time, man, I was burning through jobs. And I went to an interview at an unnamed fast food restaurant. And this is fast food. And they were like, hey, you're not what we're looking for. And I was like, dude, it's like $4 an hour. How am I not what you're looking for? I had kind of burned a lot of bridges and put myself in a spot where I didn't have a lot of options. So I figured I'll do this. I'll join the Army for a couple of years, and maybe it'll kind of help recenter me and figure out what I actually want to do somewhere down the line. And so I went in, I talked to the recruiter. I think it was on a Tuesday. It was either a Monday or Tuesday. And Friday I was in MEPS. Picked my MOS as a 12 Bravo combat engineer, and signed the dotted line. And then I think it was like 2.5, 3 weeks later, I was at Fort Leonard Wood, head shaved, took my mohawk off, and was in Charlie 169th Engineer Battalion. And off the adventure went.
Do you think the mohawk was direct correlation to what kind of music you were playing?
Oh, completely. Yeah, I was a punk rocker, man. Like I mean, if you I don't know, think like, you know, I know Rancid was big for a while, but like that, you know what I mean? Like spikes, leather, you know, bondage pants, big mohawk. I had both my middle fingers, the fingernails painted black, so when I flipped someone off, it was like it gave it that little extra like touch of panache. Yeah, no, I was like, you know, I didn't know I was graduating high school until I showed up to the ceremony to actually fucking graduate high school. So, trust me, there was nothing model citizen about me at all.
Did you have any family members that were in the military?
I had an uncle on my dad's side who was an officer in the Air Force, and he served during Vietnam. He was in Thailand, but never actually was in Vietnam. And then my mom had one brother that was in the Navy in the early 60s, another one that was in the Coast Guard a little bit after that. You know, there was the draft back then. Everyone served, basically. So my dad's brother in the Air Force volunteered. The other two guys were drafted. But that was it. I was, as far as I know, I'm the first one to win the Army.
So why did you pick combat engineer?
So you got to remember the time frame, man. This is late 90s. This is like pre-internet. You know, you just couldn't Google shit and find out the answer. So after I talked to the recruiter, and my recruiter was awesome, by the way. I know a lot of people have terrible recruiter stories. My dude was straight up. Like, he had just become a recruiter. He had been airborne infantry straight out of the 82nd and flipped through the book, you know, the crappy little book, at least at the time, they had to walk you through. And he just kind of mumbled over each page, closed it, and was like, hey, you want to know what it's really like? He was straightforward with me. I agreed. I actually went to the library because, like I said, this is pre-internet, and I checked out a book on jobs in the Army. And I went through everything. I read the whole book. It broke down whatever, like 60 or 70 different MOSs. It didn't have all of them. But when I read combat engineer, I was like, that's what I want to do. I mean, it was kind of glossed over, right? Like it didn't get into what combat engineering was eventually going to end up becoming. But it was like, yeah, landmines and explosives, and you shoot and you build, and it caught my eye. So actually, when I went to MEPS at the end of that week and did all the ASVAB testing and everything, when I sat down with the career counselor, I never saw what my job list was. I don't know what my test scores were. I have no idea. The guy asked if I know what I want to do, and I said, yeah, I want to be a 12 Bravo. I want to be a combat engineer. And he was like, really? That's what you want? I was like, yeah, it's the only thing I want. He was like, okay, all right, well, that's what you're going to be. So, yeah, it was honestly, there was something about that write-up, like blowing shit up, and I don't want to insult infantry people, but not as basic as infantry. It was that plus a little bit more, and that's what caught my attention, and that's why I wanted to do it. And honestly, eternally grateful that I checked out that book, because that decision was, it shaped. I'm 42, about to be 43, and it shaped my entire life. So
how long did you serve?
In total, 21 and a half years. Nice. 21 and a half years. I had a break in service. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to like spell out the background well enough where I can kind of, let people know, where I was coming from. So when I showed up to Fort Drum in 2004, ended up doing this really crazy long deployment in 2006, 2007. We got extended by 15 months to 15 months. My wife wanted basically at that point nothing to do with the Army. She got a job offer from Lockheed Martin in San Diego while we were still in Afghanistan. She accepted. I agreed to separate, and so I got out for a good while, man. I got out for a little while.
And how many years did you have in at that point, though?
At that point, I was like 8.5.
Okay. What rank?
8.5, pushing 9. So because I decided to get out when I was talking with Tammy, I did not agree to the additional time and service requirement that I needed to have to get promoted to staff sergeant. So I, passed the board, had the points for cutoff, all that good stuff, but could not get promoted due to me not extending. So I was an E5 when I got out. I was just a regular buck sergeant. But I was a squad leader, I've been a squad leader, when I got out? I was pushing a year, if not a little bit more than that. But yeah, so I separated, right? And I had a really good plan. Everything seemed to be straight. I was going to be a police officer in the San Diego Police Department. Went there on leave, and right after we got back, went and did the testing, passed the written test, passed the physical fitness test, and I was slated to start the academy. So I got out. We got back end of May, and I was in terminal leave maybe it was even mid-August, man. Like, I don't even think we were back more than 2 months before I ETS'd. And a lot of the things that the Army offered for people that are getting out, dude, I didn't take it. I signed the waiver on everything. I was like, don't need it. Fuck it. I'm out. Like, everyone else can have this. I know what I'm going to do. They've already told me I'm good. Like, I don't need none of it. And so I did, honestly, man, like, I didn't take advantage of a lot of stuff. So I got out. We moved to San Diego. Tammy started, I don't want to drop names. My wife started her job at Lockheed Martin, and I started the academy, and everything seemed to be going good. So I did not have a plan B. Not at all, not a nothing. I figured, like, I'm going to do this for the next 20 years. I'm good. I'm straight. Not from San Diego, but whatever. I'll make it work. Like, Ron Burgundy was from there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, correct.
Germans wear the giant.
Mm-hmm.
So what ended up happening was, long story short, the guy who just been elected mayor of San Diego, before he got that job, had retired from being the chief of police of San Diego. So he knew how many cops the city was short. So they did a hiring rush, right? Like, he got elected mayor, and he's like, hell yeah, man. So basically, my academy class at the start was almost triple the amount of normal students, because he could get all the cops he felt like the city finally needed. And it worked until, like, people crunched the numbers and realized they really couldn't afford any of us. Long story short, they shut the academy class down. So I went from having what I thought I was going to be set for, for a while, job-wise. I had nothing, man, fucking nothing. And I figured I'd collect unemployment for a little bit and then, spend some time with my son. My son was born during the deployment. I get some quality time. And then that, after a little bit, man, I was just antsy, now everything stopped, right? So, like, 100% honest, man, I had a couple panic attacks after coming off that deployment. I had just, after being in Afghanistan for 15 and a half months or whatever it was, when we got home, I struggled with stop signs and red lights. And I remember we went to Walmart after I got back to go give me some pants. And I had a panic attack on Walmart because they were just it was just sensory overload. Because, dude, you've been to Afghanistan, there's a whole lot of absolute nothing in RC East. And so when finally I hit the pause button, man, I was struggling. I did not give myself enough time to readjust into the real world. I missed everybody that I'd been in Afghanistan with. And then when I started applying for jobs, everyone told me I wasn't qualified. And I was like, fuck you. What do you mean I'm not qualified? I just led a squad of men in Afghanistan, through the worst terrain the world has to offer and fighting. And I brought all my boys back and I was unbelievably successful and wasn't even not qualified to do whatever the stupid job is. I struggled, man. I struggled hard. And I took it out on my wife. I was not happy. I was drinking a lot. I was angry. Just didn't know how to process everything that had happened because I was away from everyone that I had done it with. You know what I mean? It's one, in the Army, when you come back up from deployments, and not just the Army, but any branch, you kind of joke about what you went through, and everyone kind of laughs and says their piece or whatever. And that's kind of how it helps you process all of it. But I didn't have that. And not only that, I was in a Marine Corps town. So anytime I told someone I was in the Army, all I did was catch shit because I wasn't dumb enough to join the Marine Corps. So I was struggling, man. And then, my wife did not like her job at all. She was not happy with the position and the people she was working with. And we, me and all my anger, bitterness, and her, we had a conversation one night, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Neither of us are happy. This sucks. And I suggested going back in, and we did the pros and cons. And then, so after being out for 10 months, I guess, 9 months, a little while, went back in. I went and called a recruiter and went in and talked with them and just kind of laid everything on out. And I was like, I was very, very, very specific that I wanted to go back to Fort Drum. I wanted to go back to the exact same company that I had left. And that's what we did. So I showed up. I was able to keep my rank, thankfully. And I don't know, what was it, or late spring of 2008, I showed back up to Alpha 3rd BSTB, 3rd Brigade 10th Mountain. That was it. But the agreement my wife and I had was we were going to, this was going to be it. I was going to stay in until, retirement, wherever that was going to be, which I just did a little less than a year ago. So, yeah, man, not having a plan B and not truly prepping for the worst coming out of it, and just thinking literally dude, I was in Afghanistan for 15 months. Kiss the ring, bitch. I put in my work, respect what I just did. The other side of the coin, when you get out, man, it ain't like that. And I, even now that I'm retired and I have kind of a different mindset on it, I'll tell people I was in the Army. No one asked me what my MLS was. No one asked me about deployments. No one asked me about my ranks. No one's like, oh, you were airborne qualified. There's nothing, man. There's not. No one asked me about medals. I think it's, and when you're still in, there's so many things that come with, I guess your position is the way to say it. you're all right. So you're a senior NCO. You're a senior officer. Like, people are gonna get out of the way when you come walking down the hallway. Well, that doesn't happen when you get out. It does not happen. That shit goes away really fucking quick, and no one cares what your rank was. Like, you can, unless you're a general that gets picked up by Fox News or CNN to be a correspondent, no one cares. They don't care about your rank. Like, they'll give you the, oh, hey, thanks for your service. But that's honestly, man, that's about as far as it goes. And that was a hard slap in the face, because that trip to Afghanistan. That was my fourth deployment. I went to Kuwait before the 2003 second round in Iraq, and then went to Kosovo, the one you always give me shit for because you went to Afghanistan. And then, I did the main invasion in 2003 in Iraq, cruising right up to Baghdad with third ID and stuck around and did some more fighting. And I went to Afghanistan for 15 and a half months. Like, dude, respect, you know what I mean? And it doesn't work like that in the civilian side. And that is, I think, a hard truth that a lot of people struggle with. I have friends right now that are guys I work with that are, one dude specifically, who just got medically retired, went back to his hometown. And he, his last gig was he was a black hat at Jump Master School for the 82nd, which is, if you're a Fort Bragg, that's really fucking prestigious. And he's working at Lowe's and not very happy about it because, all right, so great, man, you got your master wings. Like, that doesn't matter in the civilian side. So I got a little sidetracked on that, but
that's fine. I was going to ask if you, so obviously the second time you got out probably went a little bit better than the first.
Yeah. So I, my retirement actually went really, really, really well. Right. So I, for everyone listening at home who's, as I'm your humble narrator telling you my story, I did another deployment after I came back in with 3rd Brigade, with Alpha 3rd BSTB with the engineers, 2009, went basically almost to the exact same spot I had been in the deployment before to Afghanistan. Came on back, refit, recycle, everything, and got ready for the next go-around. And then did not deploy at the last minute. You informed me that I'd be staying back, that I was going to do the rear detachment for the company and help run that shortly before deployment. So I did. Towards the end of deployment, I was told I was going to go be a drill sergeant, which I didn't want to do. I know you were one, but it was not something that I wanted. So I had gone to Special Forces selection at one point, and it's funny to reference Will McKinney's interview he did with you, when he said when he showed up to SFAS and there were all these guys that were like 6'3" and 230 pounds and were all muscle, and at the beginning he was really intimidated. That was me. I showed up, because I am 6'3", and just I could lift a fucking car over my head, but I had no endurance, so I didn't make it, man. I burned out pretty quickly. Didn't make it all the way to the end, and so when I was told I was going to be a drill sergeant, I was like, nope, let's go back to SFAS. Talked to my wife about it. We pulled up the Special Operations Recruiting Battalion website. She saw Civil Affairs, and she said it would be a much better fit for me. I said, okay. So I put in my packet, went to selection for that, got selected, and then ended up switching over into Civil Affairs. It's like a year pipeline. You got to do language. Everyone gets a language. I got Spanish. I became a South America guy. So this all pans into what happens when I transition. So I came out, graduated the course, went to my first team. We were eventually, due to some deployment shift around, ended up going to South America a little while later. Came back. I ended up becoming a team sergeant. Took another team down to South America, and it was actually while I was on that deployment to South America that I was on a jump, and that was where my parachute malfunctioned, and I burned in, which blew out both my knees completely. I need a double knee replacement, but I'm apparently too young. But so came back from that, and then had to go ride a desk for a little while. I got my surgeries and physical therapy and stuff. Again, this all plays into how my retirement planned out. Because I could no longer jump, I couldn't run, I got a permanent profile. I got I had to leave, right? So I couldn't stay in cool guy land. Had to go back to getting a regular haircut. And so I became my sergeant major was very cool. And he told me that there was, every division has a division headquarters as a 3-man civil affairs detachment, section, whatever you want to call it. And there's one enlisted guy. It's only for a master sergeant, but he was like, hey, you're pretty senior in 7. If you want it, it's yours. So I took that. So I went back up to drum after spending basically 8 years in 3rd Brigade, went back up to drum and took over as the G9 NCOIC, which was cool, man. We went to this deployment to Baghdad, post-ISIS, like when we got there, all the fighting had just stopped. This was like February of 18, so all, Mosul had just fallen. So I did that, and while I was on that deployment, because it was weird. Like, when I was in Iraq before in 2003, I mean, the world was burning to the ground, right? Like, it was just shooting and it was fucking terrible, like nonstop. And then I land in Baghdad, and it's crystal clear and pristine, and we fly from the airport to over where the base is, and like nothing's burning, nothing's getting, no one's shooting at us. It was really strange, but over the course of that deployment, with all the stuff I was doing, it led to some job offers, which ended up helping for a really smooth transition. I didn't take any of those jobs that were offered to me. Like, after being there and working in a room with no windows and in the Iraqi heat, when I drove down to DC to interview with some of those companies, it wasn't even an interview, they already offered me the job. One, DC, man, that traffic, if you live down there, dude, I don't know how the hell you deal with that. It was not for me. But I didn't want to sit behind a desk like that anymore. So it led me to kind of look around for something different, which led to the job I got. Now, the reason why I got hired, so the job, what I do now is I am an instructor for the National Guard. I live in Vermont. We cover New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, Connecticut, and Rhode Island. Massachusetts has its own 2-man detachment that trains our National Guard there. And it's great, man. It's literally we show up, we train, and then we go back to the hotel afterwards. It's the best part about being an NCO, right? Because I got 2 decades of knowledge in my head, and I get to show up and just teach people. But what got me the gig is because they were looking for something different, because, it's a lot of old 11 Bravos and 12 Bravos, and no one had the background I had. You know what I mean? I spent some time in South America going after counterterrorism or counter narco dudes. Let's talk. And some of the schools that I went through when I was on the USASOC side really helped out. It really got me my foot in the door that led to the job I had. So this time coming out, I landed on my feet really, really well. And not just me, I mean my family. I got lucky, man. The other thing though is I knew it was time to go, right? I know as I was transitioning and sitting in the different classes, the different briefings with the different people, there were dudes like me, who were at, 20 plus years and literally could not let go of the fact they weren't going to be in the Army anymore. The Army was going to completely fucking stop functioning because they weren't there. And that's not the case, man. The Army's a well-oiled machine. I left it once. I fucking know, man. It's going to keep working. It's going to keep running. No matter how important you think you are, and no matter what position you are. Think about it. General Milley now is the chief of staff. Guess what happens when he retires? Another guy's going to replace him. That's the system. So seeing all these guys kind of struggle with the fact that they're oh man, the Army's not going to work without me. I don't know how this is going to go. No, it's totally going to work without you. You have to accept the fact you're not going to be a part of it anymore, which I think for me, if I hadn't had the bad time I'd had before, I don't know how it would have gone for me this time around. But, dude, the Army has existed for a couple 100 years. It existed before you. It's going to exist after you. If you think you're that vital, those are the guys who no matter what happens, just can't. I think they're the ones who just never are able to land on their feet. You got to be willing to close the book and push it off to the side and be willing to start the next thing, which is what I did. And going referencing Will McKinney, man, listen to him talk to you. That was awesome. That was inspiring. Like, I love hearing that he went through that schooling he went through and as insanely impossible as it sounded, and then got the job he wanted, and he's exactly where he wants to be. That's great. I love that. And I don't think a lot of people put themselves out there in the way that he did. And for me, on a much lower scale as I did. So,
backing up a little bit, how many deployments did you say you went on?
Oh man, shit. 8 total.
Okay. What was your total time out of the country?
Fuck, a lot. I don't know. I think it came in with almost 6 years total. When it was all said and done. So out of my 8 deployments, 6 were combat, 2 were operational. Those were the South America ones. To be fair, that last Iraq one, yes, technically combat, but I was fighting ISIS one PowerPoint presentation at a time. I went to Kuwait for a couple months before. This is the end of the 90s, right? So before OIF kicked off. And again, Kosovo, that one that you and I always went back and forth about. Came back from that, turned around and went to Kuwait for the invasion to start in 2003. Did actually physically cut the fence before to start in 2003. Opening up Lane 9 Alpha for the invasion. I was there for however long when I come back, end of September, beginning of October. Afghanistan from February of 2006 to end of May of 2007. Afghanistan all 2009. Yeah, man. So eight total.
What, if you feel comfortable talking about it, Chris? Let's talk about one of the worst things you've had to go through in your deployments. If you had to pick, probably the worst thing, if you're comfortable talking about it.
No. So if we'd had this conversation even 10 years ago, I wouldn't have been comfortable about it. But it's and so in Iraq in 2003, it was mid-August of 2003. We were in between missions. The company I was in, we'd gone from supporting, because we showed up. We were like bastard engineer battalion, and we got kicked around all sorts of different units. We were waiting for the next unit. So where we were at the time, we were kind of in a refit, right? Like we were, just getting ready to push back out. We ended up going to Sadr City for what ended up being like my last month in Iraq at the time. The part of the story, as we were talking about this earlier, that I'll get to that I didn't tell you, was the way Howie died. We were getting ready to go, packed back up, and I was mechanized at the time. So we had M113s. If you don't know what that is, all the audience listening at home, that's a very basic armored personnel carrier. It's not a Bradley, it's not a tank, but the back half of the top you can open up and throw back so you can get a whole bunch of people standing on the top. That'll come into play in a minute. So I smoked at the time, and the guy who's now my brother-in-law and another dude took a quick smoke break. We went out of the building we were in, and right next to the vehicles, smoking a cigarette, and hear a gunshot go off. And we just figured someone had a negligent discharge. Didn't think nothing about it. After like a minute and a half, we didn't hear like a oh shit, like a my bad, like fuck, like a nothing. So we went to see what was going on. Hopped on, so the troop hatch was open on the back of the track, and there was a kid in there. So this kid had showed up. I got back from Kosovo end of November of 2002. Come January of 2003, we were already, well, actually it was December of 2003, we were already on orders to go to Kuwait for the invasion. And it was like the end of January, beginning of February, we were in Kuwait. So there was like very little turnaround coming off one deployment to go to the next. And this kid showed up in between that. It was fresh out of basic. It was him and a bunch of guys. but he had shot himself straight through the heart. And so the guy who's now my brother-in-law, we hopped up and jumped on down, and as we went to where the combat lifesavers bag was supposed to be, so we could start working on them. One of the things that I don't know if you ever picked up on, Scott, was why I was a stickler for what I was on where things were supposed to be in the vehicle, is because that vehicle was not ours, and that squad did not follow the platoon standards. So when I reached for the combat lifesaver bag, it was not where it was supposed to be. So, like, my brother-in-law is putting all the pressure he can on his chest. I'm digging through the fucking track, trying to find the CLS bag. Eventually I find it, pull it on out. We're screaming for medics. I get an IV bag in his arm. I'm squeezing the thing for all it's worth. And we are... So, when a round goes through the heart, man, that's arterial blood. It's thick as fucking paint. And it was like purple blood that was just pumping out of him. So we're like, and it, the heart pumps with a vengeance. So we got it on our face, we got it on our hands, we got it on our shirts, like completely fucking covered in blood. Finally, stretcher comes, lower the back, the ramp for the track, get him on there, run him out to the helicopter, push him off. And, he was dead before we even, got him on there. Like it sucked, man. Like, here's the thing,
Chris, can I ask you something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Was this accidental or on purpose?
No, it was totally on purpose. Totally
Okay.
on purpose.
All right.
He had been asking for weeks. He needed to update his SGLI. He came from, his parents were from Mexico, and he grew up in an unbelievably poor town in Southern California. And whenever we find, he was asking to up his life insurance for weeks, and once we got his insurance upped, it was like 3 days later after he came back from that he shot himself. So it was 100% intentional. But I felt fucking terrible about it for years. Like I blame myself. The thing is, he absolutely, for whatever reason, wanted to die. And I don't know why. I know they found a note eventually, and it was turned over to the criminal investigation department. But I don't know what it was. I'm guessing for the money, because I know his family they were migrant farmers and dirt poor. But yeah, man, he died, and I was completely covered in blood, and very angry about it for a very long time. I wrote his parents a letter, even though they didn't speak English, like apologizing and wanting their forgiveness because I couldn't save their son. And for a long time, I was like, man, if I could have got to that CLS bag, if that combat lifesaver bag would have been where it was supposed to have been, I could have saved him. But I mean, when you get down to it, all these years later, looking back on it, because it's coming up on 17 years, it wouldn't have made a difference. He shot himself where he shot himself intentionally, and that was that. So out of all 8 deployments, that was the only guy that I ever actually had die, only soldier I had die in front of me. I got, which I actually want to string into something else while we're talking about this.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, I'm not gonna lie, man. I got survivor's guilt, fucking bad, like really fucking bad. Like, as I was retiring and did, my physical and everything, and I actually wasn't going to go talk to a psychiatrist. Didn't want to do it. I didn't want the PTSD tag. I think it's too many guys do it. I think it's kind of, I think some people have it that legitimately have it. I think a lot of people fucking milk the system to get, a higher VA rating or whatever. And I didn't want to go down that road. So talking, what got me to go talk to the psychiatrist for the PTSD screening was while I was on the, doing the civil affairs stuff, I went to a driving and shooting school. It was awesome, actually. Like, legit, like you're driving in a car, shooting through like the windshield of the car to hit targets. It was amazing. But it was me and another guy who was one of the students who had done a bunch of Iraq time. And, for the shooting school, they just buy junker cars because you're shooting through them to hit the targets. But the engine wouldn't turn over, so they flooded the engine and the muffler blew, like completely blew. And he and I hit the ground, like, because it's a bomb that went off. So legit hit the ground. I come to, I got my arms reached out like I have my rifle and I'm looking for a target. Well, the other guy that did that got out a couple years before I did. And so as we're talking, and he's like, hey, you need to go start getting this shit sorted because I got it, you got it. You went through some shit. There's no shame. Go fucking talk about it. So took his advice, with a grain of salt and agreed to do the PTSD screening. And the big thing, as I was telling the guy, what ended up coming on back is survivor's guilt. I mean, 100%. I go to the VA every 2 weeks and talk to them about it. So out of my 8 deployments, man, and that's a lot. I don't know how many you have, but I don't know if it's 8. Most people don't hit that number. That's pretty fucking high. And I never got touched. I never got shot. I never got blown up in an IED. I saw the truck go up in front of me. I drove over IEDs. I drove over mines that the Russians had put in where, like, the mine had corroded, so it, like, coughed up smoke. I had an RPG burn my hair. I had fucking tracers shoot by my head. I mean, like, how did I not get touched? I don't fucking know, man. And I legitimately now, all these years later, I struggle with it. I do. And I, for the longest time, didn't want to deal with it. So I kept kind of pushing it down because think about the soldier mentality, right? Like if I say there's something wrong, I can't accomplish the mission. And if I can't accomplish the mission, how good of a soldier am I? So I'm going to shut up and I'm going to lace up my boots and grab my rifle. I'm going to go to work. And that's what I did. And I didn't realize. I mean, dude, think about all the Class A inspections we did. And there was like, what, 5 of us that didn't have Purple Hearts? And I was one of them. And I remember everyone still was being like, how do you not have a Purple Heart? I don't know. I don't know what was so special about me that kept me from not getting touched. And that's what I struggle with. And I still struggle with it. And even though I'm talking to you now, I'm getting choked up talking about it because I don't know.
I gotta tell you, Chris, that's a pretty brave thing. Two things: brave that you're able to recognize that you probably should talk to somebody, and B, that you actually went through and followed through with it. Because I think that's a lot of us guys that have been in for a little while, kind of grew up, I don't want to age myself, but 70s, 80s, 90s, kind of were taught like that's not a thing to do. And when you hear like comedians, that's what I reference to. When I hear comedians talking about getting therapy, because every one of them seems to do it. The first couple of times I heard it, I kind of like laughed it off, said I would never need it. But, getting therapy is a good thing. It is. I'm in therapy right now.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a good thing. Like, I shit talked it for years. Like, I don't need it. You know what I mean? Like, if something's bothering me, I'll grab another beer and I'll be good. But the fact of the matter is you can only push it down for so long. And then it really starts having some lasting effects. And, so yeah, even though I fought off the idea, I guess it's been about a year and a half now. I've been going to counselors at the VA, and it's been good. I still, it's a long road,
right.
But I mean, let's be honest, man. I mean, even besides the survivor's guilt stuff, like I've been in situations where most normal people never they don't. I mean, like I was just saying, raise your hand if you're in the audience where you had an RPG burn your hair because it went that close above your head. Not very fucking many people, like we go through some weird, crazy shit that no one outside of us understands. And how do you tell anyone about that? You can't, like, like I was talking earlier about on the civilian side. No one cares. Like my neighbor, we'll sit down and have like a beer at his fire pit, and he's a total hippie, like Grateful Dead tattoo on his leg, whole thing, and he's like, "Oh, cool, man, like the Army." Cool. I mean, he'll be like, "Yeah, let me tell you about the time I smoked this dude." Like, it just doesn't, it doesn't work that way. And it's tough not being around your people anymore, like, so going and talking to someone, and I know a lot of people should talk to VA. My experience so far has been very good. But I mean, that's what they're there for. They're there to listen to you. Like my counselor here, where I live now, her son he was an SF guy. He was in the 7th group, got burned out after whatever, like 10 years of back-to-back-to-back deployments, and had to get out. He became like a yoga instructor, runs some hippie camp down in Florida now. But so she gets it, you know what I mean? And so they're good to talk to, and it's a good outlet. And I used to think there was shame in saying there's something wrong, and now that I'm a lot older, I don't think there's any shame in it. I think it actually makes you braver and better to say, like, "Yo, I'm off. Like, there's something wrong with me. I need to go talk to someone about it," and start sorting through some shit than pushing on down and being like, "Just give me another shot of Jack Daniels and it'll go away." Because I can tell you for a fact, Scott, all them shots, it ain't gonna make it go away.
Right. Eventually you have to deal with it or not, and just be miserable the rest of your life. Honestly, that's the two choices you have.
No, that's the truth. And the or not, I don't think is the way to go. I used to think that, and I was 100% about that. But now, I don't think that it is. I think, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. If you're feeling off, go talk to someone.
So overall, what advice would you give somebody who is getting out now? You can give advice on both getting out before you retire and then regular ETS. Overall, what do you think your piece of advice would be to somebody getting out?
Okay, so I got to tell you, my getting out in 2007, I should have had a plan B. I put all my eggs in one basket, and it completely backfired on me. I didn't put any thought in anything else. So having multiple options, is the way to go. Like, whatever your job offer is, wherever you think you're going to go back to, don't just think that's automatically going to work out. Because I thought I was, I was good to go for life, and I absolutely wasn't. The thing was with my retirement, man. Like, the systems that are in place in the Army, at least up at Fort Drum, where I retired from. When I went in and sat down with my transition counselor, to help me like look for a job and this and that, and when she looked at my resume, she didn't know what to say. So think about it, right? So I had just come back from Baghdad, and I had all this reconstruction stuff and post-ISIS, and I'm at the UN and the Australian embassy and the U.S. embassy and dealing with the State Department. And then before that, I'm in South America doing counter-narco, communist terrorism stuff, and going to some really weird spots in the Amazon, trying to counter the FARC and all sorts of other stuff. She had no idea what to say, like none, So the counselor I had was like, you could tell she was used to, oh, you're an infantryman, go be a cop or prison guard. Oh, you're working S1, let's find you a job in human resources. So when she looked at my resume, she had no idea what to say, didn't know how to process it, and honestly gave me no job suggestions. So the system, for at least for me, as I was getting out, and I went through everything, man. I did every class, every course, everything that they had to make sure I was good. It wasn't all that I needed. So I'm very lucky that my wife spent a decade plus in the corporate world and was able to kind of help guide me. But it's what the Army has is good. It's not perfect. Don't rely on that completely. It just doesn't. It helps, but if that's all you think you're going to need to transition, not. Look elsewhere. There's a lot of great websites that are worth joining. Make sure you got like a good LinkedIn profile. Make sure you go on Glassdoor and look at jobs and Indeed. Build solid profiles. Have like 15 people read your resume, man. Have 7 to 10 different resumes that you can throw out there depending on what the job is. And the biggest thing, honestly, well, not the biggest thing, but one of them, learn how to explain shit in civilian terms, man. No one knows what a squad leader is. No one knows what a team leader is. Like, okay, you led however many dismounted patrols. Figure out a way how to explain that in a way that whatever place you're applying to, it makes sense to them. Because people don't speak Army, man. They don't speak military. And you come at them with, some shit like that, it ain't gonna work. So, yeah, just
so
take advantage of. Go ahead.
Well, all right. So you're saying the biggest advantage is to have people take advantage of the services that are there, but don't count that as the end all be all answer.
Yeah, it's not absolute. It's not absolute. Like, there's plenty of other things that are out there that can help you out. And use contacts, man. Like, trust me, if you spent any amount of time in the Army, someone who's working somewhere on the civilian side. And there ain't no shame in reaching out to them to talk, to define work. Like the company I work for now, the counter ID cell at Fort Drum, those guys are on the same contract. And I went over there because, you and I know some of the people who work there without dropping names. And I was like, hey, is this a job that I should, be looking into? Is it worth it? Like, how's the pay? What's everything? So, people are out there. Ask for help. Ask for a foot in the door. There's not the way how the corporate world is, especially now with the way how the economy is with this virus. Ask. There's, I've told plenty of people that I know right now that are transitioning and retiring, like, if you are looking for a job then within my company, I can recommend you for it. I know you, I trust you, I like you. Hit me up, and I will refer you for it. And I got an email today from my company telling me that one of the guys that I referred, he got a job offer. So reach out, man. Reach out. Like, we're all super tight, right? Like, even like, when's the last time you and I had a conversation? I don't know, 8-9 years ago, and we're talking now, and it feels there's nothing weird about it. Like, you're my platoon sergeant. Like, you're my sponsor for PLDC. It's all good. There's a bond that we all get together that people on the outside just don't get, and take advantage. I won't say take advantage of it, but that's not the right way to say it. But kind of lean on it, like, it's there. Like, if there's, someone who's in a spot that, might be able to put in a good word for you, or that for my company where they have within their internal website a spot where you can specifically refer someone to it, ask. I'm telling you, on the civilian side, no one is going to give you a handout. So last month, before all the travel stuff, got nixed and we all got locked down like how we are now, I had to go do a training event back at Fort Drum. And I went and saw my old boss and a lot of guys I worked with. And, these guys are, sergeant majors and lieutenant colonels, and they're all now starting their separation process. And when they were like, basically asking me the same questions you're asking me. And I was just as honest with them as I am with you. I'm like, hey, man, like, no one cares you were a colonel. No one cares you were a sergeant major. Like, the C's part for you now when you come walking in the room and there's like a hushed silence because, it's Sergeant Major Benutsack or whoever. Like, no one fucking cares, man. Like, that rank no longer carries any weight. Any of the, whatever that comes with it, people, wanting to kiss your ass and kiss the rings, that shit's gone, man. Like, now it's actually you, who you are as a person. That's what's going to get you your next job, your next position, and being able to start the next chapter in your life. So if you try to go on in there and be like, kiss the ring, I'm this guy, that shit ain't going to get you nowhere. Be humble. Be willing to say you don't know, and be willing to yeah, just be willing to start at a spot you're comfortable with, but don't expect to be at the same level you were coming out of the Army. That does happen to, some generals and maybe some really senior sergeant majors, but for most of us, man, it's not how it goes. It's just not how it goes. And you got to be cool with that.
Just another cog in the machine.
You are, man. And the machine, like I said before, the machine keeps kicking. Like, you need the machine more than it needs you. Because even for me, once I dropped my retirement paperwork and I called the civil affairs branch, because I was besides like one other dude that worked at the recruiting station for SOF, I was the only CA guy in the 10th Mountain Division. So when I dropped my retirement packet, I called my branch manager, and I was like, hey, just so you know, and this was into August of 18. I was like, hey, just so you know, drop my packet, man. Like, I'm out. I'm done. 1 July is my retirement date next year. Within a month, my replacement was there.
Huh.
So, like, you can think, and even on that, CA is not SF, and I don't pretend it to be. It's still a really small branch, and I knew the guy who was my replacement, but so as awesome as I thought I was, as cool as I thought I was, and I, like, did all these great things in Baghdad and whatever, blah, blah, blah. The second I stepped away, there was someone else already in my chair. So the system will continue to exist without you, and you have to accept that. I feel like I'm repeating myself a lot.
No, you're good, Chris. You're good. I really appreciate you doing this with and taking time to tell your story. I think it really helps explain the message more, like how we're trying to, give help when we give help and take help when we need it, Congratulations on the retirement.
Thanks, man.
Congratulations on, realizing that you finally did need to get a little bit of help with some of your other stuff. So really, I'm happy for you. I'm glad.
Yeah, and thanks, man. I appreciate that. And, I didn't know where the road was going to go, and going and getting help was a great thing. Like all the guys have known over the years, and you have known, there were so many that were killed in Iraq and Afghanistan, and guys that I knew really, really, really well, and every a lot of those losses, man, hit me hard, really, really, really hard. In fact, the pictures that I sent to you and Andrew, there's a couple of them where the people that are in the picture eventually end up getting killed down, years after those photos were taken. And it all, each one weighed on me, especially the more I went out and about, and I still continued to somehow, minus my parachute malfunctioning on that one jump, like I didn't get, I didn't have a scratch. And even just besides the bond, right? Like I got two older brothers that, like I don't particularly fucking care for. Like if something's happened for them, like, I don't know. I guess, I'll go to the funeral. I'll feel bad, but I'm not going to mope around on them. Like these guys that I know that have died, like when I went to that engineer wall at Fort Leonard Wood in 2013 for a school I went to, I just standing there looking at it and being like, man, I know him, and I knew him, and I knew him, and I knew him. And it was like this never-ending list of, guys, and some of them that I felt were way better than I was at doing the job. And, I was pretty fucking cocky there towards the end. Like, I was really confident in me being able to do what I could do. But these guys were better than me, and, so all the years of that, the years later, like, it just, I didn't want to admit that I needed help. But if you're anyone who's listening to this and you served and you're kind of feeling some guilt or however you're feeling, it's seriously ask for help. Ask for help. Ask for help.
And you don't even have to go to a therapist at first. Just talk to somebody else that you know. I mean, you can, like we always talk about this. Call somebody, like you said, Chris. We haven't talked to him probably 10 years, but it's not weird. It's not awkward. And I'm sure if I needed you at 2:00 in the morning because I was having a rough time, I'm sure you'd pick up, and vice versa.
Absolutely, 100%. Wouldn't even think twice about it.
Yep.
There's absolutely nothing wrong or weird to it doesn't have to start with a therapist. I mean, I guess maybe I cannonball in the deep end out the gate. I don't know.
No, it's good though. I mean, I think eventually people need to get there at that point, but initially, because military and VA, it's a process to get the approval and stuff to get it. So in the meantime, if there's something that somebody has a problem and they need to talk to anybody, just reach out to somebody. Hey, Chris, thank you for sharing your story with us. I really appreciate it. I think you're going to help a lot of people. Just in the future, if you ever need anything, get a hold of me. Again, thank you very much. Me and Andrew appreciate it. Thank you for listening to this episode. Getting the message out about suicide prevention is a team effort. We need people to be brave enough to tell their stories. We need supporters to care enough to spread the word. If you have a story you want to share, please email us at survivingasacivilian.casting@gmail.com. And if you want to help share this project, like and subscribe to Surviving as a Civilian on Instagram and Facebook. The most important thing Andrew and I want to get across is that if you need help, get help. And if you can give help, please do it. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is at 1-800-273-8255. Until next time.